Have you ever wondered why some people with nothing in their hands and no wealthy connections still manage to attract millions of dollars from investors? While you, despite all your efforts, presenting every impressive number and a grand business plan, only get a polite smile and a firm no. That winter day in 1986, amidst the bitter cold of New York, a man stood silently on a bustling street corner, without even a warm cup of coffee in hand. But just a few months later, that same man made some of Wall Street's most powerful investors line up, waiting for the chance to give him their money. He didn't promise million-dollar profits. He didn't own a prestigious company. So what exactly did he do? And what made a seasoned investor exclaim after their very first meeting, "I don't know what your business model is, but I do know one thing. I want to return to that place again." What strange magic happened in that small room? And how did just one cup of coffee outshine every million-dollar business proposal? This isn't just a story about coffee. It holds an emotional shortcut that can help you win over any investor, even when all you have is a burning passion. Are you ready to discover it? Howard Schultz grew up in a poor Brooklyn neighborhood where the American dream seemed like nothing more than a fairy tale on TV. His father, a truck driver, spent his life doing hard labor, never once carrying a health insurance card in his pocket. Howard could never forget the day his father broke his leg and couldn't be admitted to the hospital, simply because the family couldn't afford it. On those freezing winter nights, with the wind howling through the worn-out window frames, young Howard would sit quietly, staring at the ceiling, asking himself, "How do I break free from this endless cycle of poverty?" Years later, determined to leave that darkness behind, Howard worked countless jobs, from sales to marketing coffee machines. And then one day, he stumbled upon what he believed could change his life forever: a marketing position at a company with a rather strange name, Starbucks. But to his surprise, Starbucks at that time was just a small shop in Seattle, selling roasted coffee beans. There were no cafes, no cozy spaces for people to gather, just plain coffee bags neatly arranged on shelves. Standing in the cold warehouse, staring at those lifeless coffee bags, Howard felt his heart sink. Is this really what I dreamed of? Selling dry coffee beans? Could that ever change anything? So what happened next? How did such a modest dream grow into a success story that made the whole world remember his name? The turning point came in 1983 when Howard was sent on a business trip to Milan, Italy. For the first time in his life, he walked through a city where every street corner carried the rich, fresh aroma of coffee. But it wasn't just the scent that overwhelmed him. It was the people in the coffee shops. At a small cafe called Peck on Via Spadari, Howard stood in awe. The atmosphere was nothing like he'd ever known. People didn't rush in to grab a coffee to go. They sat down. They talked. They shared their life stories, laughing heartily over tiny cups of espresso. Here, coffee wasn't just a drink. It was a catalyst for human connection. In that moment, Howard felt as if a blindfold had been lifted from his eyes. Why is coffee just a commodity in America? But here, it's an entire experience. That question echoed in his mind throughout his remaining days in Milan. Returning to the US, armed with what he believed was the secret to transforming an entire industry, Howard passionately pitched his idea. "We don't just sell coffee, we sell an experience. Let's turn Starbucks into a place where people can connect. A third place beyond home and work. Your life happens over a cup of coffee. but all he received in return were cold, dismissive shakes of the head. The leadership believed it was a naive dream, and they were convinced Americans had no interest in lingering over tiny cups of coffee. Howard stood at a crossroads: stay and work under a roof that rejected his vision, or walk away and risk everything on the dream he held so dearly. And so, on a rainy afternoon in Seattle, Howard officially resigned, empty-handed, branded a fool, and without a single dollar of capital. What do you think he did next? Did he patiently knock on the doors of every investor? Or would he find a smarter way to turn his dream into reality? Howard knew all too well. If he only brought lengthy business plans filled with cold, hard numbers, he would never convince anyone. Even he had once stood in Starbucks' warehouse, feeling disillusioned by those very numbers. He understood one simple truth. If he just sat there and waited, his dream would remain nothing more than ink on paper. So he did the only thing he could. He knocked on the doors of every acquaintance, every former colleague from his days in the coffee machine business. People who once trusted and admired him. He didn't bring thick financial forecasts or promise sky-high returns. He brought a story. The story of quiet afternoons in Milan, where he stood for hours in tiny cafes, witnessing strangers become friends over steaming cups of espresso. He told them about those moments in that small, warm space where people didn't just drink coffee, but rediscovered empathy, shared their burdens, and found themselves again. He didn't talk about ROI or dazzling projections. He simply asked them, "Have you ever wished for a place like that, amidst the busy, cold-hearted streets of America?" And then he painted a vivid picture of a space where people could retreat after long, exhausting days, where they wouldn't just rush by, but truly pause, breathe in the aroma of coffee, and open their hearts to complete strangers. It was the fire in Howard's eyes and his unwavering belief that made those listening suddenly see the world he was chasing. And they understood. They weren't just investing in a coffee shop. They were becoming part of a real dream. In just a few months, Howard raised over $400,000, enough to open his first coffee shop, Il Giornale, where every detail was infused with the spirit of Italy. And when it was time to invite those first investors, he didn't bring them into boardrooms. He brought them straight into that space to feel for themselves the magic he once experienced in Milan. As those investors stepped through the doors, there was no need for fancy introductions. They heard the rhythmic hiss of the espresso machine, breathed in the rich, lingering aroma of freshly brewed coffee, and felt the lively conversations of strangers opening up to one another. Without a single pitch, that warm, welcoming atmosphere closed the deal for Howard. Even the coldest hearts of Wall Street softened over a steaming cup of espresso. They stayed longer, they spoke more, and they returned not to evaluate the business, but simply because they wanted to feel that feeling again. And then the first checks appeared. Tens of thousands at first, then hundreds of thousands. Within months, Howard raised over $1.6 million, enough to buy back Starbucks itself, the very company that once turned down his dream. From a tiny store, Starbucks under Howard Schultz exploded into a global coffee empire, where every cup wasn't just a drink, but an experience that left people with unforgettable memories. And what do you think? In the end, what truly makes people open their wallets? A stack of dense business plans, or simply a fleeting, unforgettable emotional moment that stays with them forever? So, where are you right now on your own journey? Are you still fine-tuning every number in your business proposal? Or just sitting there, waiting for an investor to say yes? But maybe, just maybe, you've forgotten one thing. If they could experience it even once, no words would be needed.
Howard Schultz once didn't even have a warm cup of coffee to hold in the freezing winter.
But he went on to create spaces where people willingly returned because they found themselves there. And what about the product you're holding in your hands? The story you're nurturing deep within? Is it powerful enough to make someone step inside and never want to leave? Will you accept staying right where you are? Or are you ready to break through and create the turning point of your life? Don't hesitate to share your answer. Perhaps your choice today will light a spark of hope for someone else standing at their own crossroads.